Welcome to the panel 6. It's a pleasure to participate in a conversation as rich and full of knowledge as this with such incredible people. First of all, I would like to apologize my language limitation. I can understand of a bit of English, but I still don't feel comfortable speaking. So, as you can tell, I am writing a short text. I would like to highlight some of the things about our work that, in my view, are central to our discussion. When we talk about worker health, we are taking into account not only the clinical health of the worker that can be treated with healthcare, but we are also talking about the bad working conditions that are the norm for a large portion of the Brazilian population, like excessive workload, precarious work conditions, and bad remuneration. In the context of our talk, the worker could be the person who opens a clothing store every day for a minimum wage, the cashier of a supermarket, the bus driver, etc. These workers are obligated to continue to work for fear of losing their jobs, and they can go into social isolation. In addition to this, we also have what we present here as informal workers, who are not necessarily linked to any company, but work in the most crowded regions of city every day, selling food, providing service, or collecting garbage in the streets to sell to recycle industries. These people do not have the privilege of staying at home, and every day we see the Brazilian government, supported by industries and businessmen, emphasize this in a masked way through measures of trade flexibility to protect the country from a future possible crisis in the economy. Now, think of that group of workers and add a facial mask. What changes? Nothing. Of course, here we advocate the use of safety equipment for all people, but we must not forget that the use of a facial mask is not of how effective when the worker is collecting garbage from the floor in his barefoot. In addition, at the end of the pandemic, we will have the same people in the same precarious working conditions, but now without masks. Now, I will give the word to Leandro to continue the discussion. Thank you.
Hello, you all again. You can hear me? I guess you can hear me. Do you hear me, Aléxia? Yes. Well, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. We are joining you here from Brazil. So here is lunchtime. We are noon here, perhaps, or most likely, it's already night to you, I guess. So good morning, good afternoon, and good night to all of you, just to be short. It's a pleasure to participate in this panel 6. I believe that this topic is very relevant to the current scenario that we are living. Today, we're going to discuss a little bit about the name of the panel, the survival of the informal workers during the COVID-19 pandemic in Brazil, who can and who cannot be quarantined. In fact, this is the title of this conversation. When we talk about quarantine, there's a miswording there, because quarantine here in Brazil means that no one is allowed to get out, just the essential services. So it's not what we mean here. Quarantine is if you can't go into social isolation, then you should. But if you can't, there's nothing we can do to prevent you to go into work. But there are decrees that say that you have to stay home, you have to put on a facial mask, you have to wash your hands, and this type of stuffs. But it's not quarantine like quarantine. Uh, you are not allowed to get out of your home. But here we talk about social isolation. That we is that what we mean when you say quarantine in the title? Around the world today, we have more than 2 billion informal workers. Uh, sorry, in every area we can imagine it, from hairdressers to food delivery guys, from um, open market vendors to those who pick the vegetables that will not stop the hypermarket, the supermarket uh, from going down, because the supermarkets are not informal workers, but they depend on informal workers to get groceries and other food that needs that came from informal workers. Of those 2 billion, close to 1.6 billion uh, are directly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So not so much for the economy, the economic question. What is the economic question? The lockdowns close the informal market. So if you think about the economic question is when we implement lockdowns, the informal workers loses their jobs. But we are talking also from the health perspective of these informal workers that already live in a precarious condition. Sorry, is allergic. It's not anything else. Um, in this way, the of the lockdown, the worker has to stay home and he loses his job, he loses his income. But in the health scenario, this work is forced to go to work, on the other hand, and he has to work to support his family. But he returns home with possible infected and infected other people at home, and he has to live daily with this fear because uh, he may not become ill, but he will infect other people, and this is a problem. Thus, the informal worker is facing a dilemma, which for the deniers seems a bit exaggerated, but is the best way to describe what is happening right now. Work and die, or stay home and starve to death. It seems exaggerated, but it's not. We can better explain this dilemma uh, in an applied way. The informal worker will not stop working. Even if there are decrees on top of decrees, saying that he is still that he have to stay home, he's still gonna work because he has to provide for his family. This class has always been at risk since the beginning. So we're talking right now about the pandemic scenario and pointing out the contradictions of the actual um, economic system that we live in here. The informal worker, already lives in a scenario where he don't have insurance, they don't have security in the incomes, they don't have health insurance, they don't have nothing. But now we have a pandemic scenario, and they still don't have nothing, but now we say that they have to put on a mask. Um, so in the current pandemic context caused by the new coronavirus, these workers are forced to comply with the rules of official decrees published by the states and the cities here in Brazil. However, such rules do not take into account the specificities of informal workers who are exposed to the risk of contamination daily to meet the demand of the upper classes, who are privileged to stay at home during the quarantine. Thus, we bring here a discussion on how this pandemic affects different classes in different ways, separating those who have and those who do not have the privilege of staying home. So I will try now to share my screen. I don't know if it's going to work. Uh, let's see. So I had to choose one tab here. So I don't know if you all are seeing my screen. Yes. Now I'm gonna try to put this in full screen. I guess it's here. You still see my screen? Yes. Okay. So for me is your face is in the right here is covering some of the screen, but it's not a problem. So this is just I'm going to show you just some plots. It's not a presentation, PowerPoint presentation, but it's just to illuminate what is happening here in Brazil. So this is a free market in Brazil. We're talking more specifically about northeast region of Brazil, but you can find this type of
I'm sorry,
street markets.
Leandro, I'm not looking at the market. I think it's second slide. No, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
What?
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
I see what happened. I'm gonna stop the share and share again. I think it's this one. I think it's because when I put in full screen, the presentation opens another tab. Now you see the market. Yes. Okay. So free markets are everywhere, not only in Brazil. Everywhere we have free markets, and this is the basis of not the economy, but if you want to get a best price in fresh fruits, you go to the free market, because in the supermarket the prices are a bit higher, and the products commonly come from the free market. So they feed the rest of the city and the companies who buy there. So this is a free market, just to enlighten what is a free market here in Brazil. And here is a plot, and it's a map. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, my pointer. Here's Brazil, and sorry, it's in Portuguese, but the colors here mean the infection rate. So as more dark is more infected, then you can see Brazil, São Paulo is the place we have more infectives and more deaths. And here is the northeast region of Brazil. São Paulo has now the more infected and more deaths because it was the epicenter of the pandemic in Brazil. The pandemic begins at São Paulo at the time in late February, and the first death was in São Paulo. So it's normal to think that São Paulo is going to be the epicenter, but we can't look at this way and think that São Paulo is the problem, because we have micro regions that has their own problems, and as we speak to yesterday, but I'm gonna say right now again, Brazil is divided in states, and these states have some kind of independence of the federal government, but they still are under the norms and decrees that the government puts out. But the states have some kind of independence, so they're gonna deal with the pandemic in different ways, but they all fall under the same norm. In the right side of the slide, we have the evolution of the contaminate rate. So we are now today with 351,000 infected in Brazil, And jumping for another one, I'm gonna push this here to see. We have 22,000 deaths in Brazil. And as you can see from the curve, we are still climbing this curve. We are not nearly close to the peak of this pandemic here in Brazil. So it's really a big problem. To put in context, as today, Brazil is the second country in the world with most contaminated people. You can see here in the left, yesterday we were just behind Russia, and now we are in the second place of contaminated people. That's a big problem. And we are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the sixth place of deaths global wide. And it seems that France has more, Spain and Italy has more, but Italy, Spain, and France already peaked the pandemic, and they all are going down right now. Brazil is still climbing, so it's not a surprise that we're gonna be the second one in that soon. And this is a real problem. Here's just a comparison from France and sorry, and in Brazil. When we begin to run these models, this here is not a model, it's just a projection. It doesn't take into account anything real in the world, but just the tendency of the curve. When we first begin to run these projections for Brazil, Brazil was right here with just over 50 deaths per day, and we run a best scenario case and a worst scenario case. When Brazil was here, France was over 400 deaths per day, and all of us thinking, oh, Brazil is never going to get so high in deaths per day. And now we just blow up the pessimistic scenario, and we are here with more than 1,000 deaths per day, and is still climbing. So we are, pardon the language, screwed. Here, I'm not going to go into details of this model, but this is projections, this kind of projections that we are working here with the government and the state government to try to understand the tendency of the curve. Here in the right is Brazil. What is happening right now? We are following this climb. Here is log scale, but we are climbing this. We are right here right now, and we have all this to go. We take into account the asymptomatics and the symptomatics, because most of the population are asymptomatics, but they still contaminate. And here, just for comparison, we have Italy. The model for Italy. Italy already passed the peak, but it's still going down. It's not the time, I guess, I think, to freely open, but things are going a bit better in Italy because they already have passed the peak. But we have to be cautious with a second wave in every country that already has passed the peak of the pandemic. Sorry, Christoforos, I didn't have time to run Greece, but maybe later we can share these plots. So bringing this to what we were talking here, this is the what's the name, Aléxia? In English, IDH is the Human Development Index. Yes, is Human Development Index for Brazil. This plot here is a bit old, but it's gonna do the trick. Blue means that this index of human development is high, and red is low. We can divide these for cities. So it's the Human Development Index by cities here. So we see that the north region of Brazil is suffering more with the Human Development Index. And the south of Brazil and southeast of Brazil is doing better. São Paulo is the more contaminated state, as we speak earlier, but has the more capacity of treatment. But it was the epicenter, and that's why it has the more contaminated, is the more contaminated region. But we have to look here in the northeast region, where we have the more discrepancies in the human index. So here's a closer look, and yellow is bad and green is good. So we see that we have few cities in the northeast of Brazil that has some more or less good human development index. Actually, blue is really high, and this type is green here is kind of in the middle. So almost all the cities has poor structured, poor education, poor healthcare systems, and all this is going to reflect how the pandemics enrolls. Here now is a more closer look at Natal, or city, here in Rio Grande do Norte, the state of Rio Grande do Norte, and is the city that we base our this study on, because we can see it like this. Here is not the Human Development Index. Here is the contaminating index by 100 people, I guess, 1,000 people, I guess. This neighborhood here is called Potengi. Potengi is how do I put this? Is in the suburbs. It's not in the center of the city. Is periphery. It's a peripheric neighborhood. Okay. Yes, it's a poor neighborhood that is peripheric to the city. This right here is the center of the city, and this region here, kind of pink, is the region where we have free markets. It's right here. But when you see this, you may think, well, but if this region here is the region where you have the free markets, the region where more people get crowd, why here is not the place with more contaminated people? Because the people who work here live here. So they get buses and they get 2-3 hours of transportation to get in here, get contaminated, and go back to their homes. So we're gonna have the more contaminated regions where the poor people live, and these poor people usually work as informal workers in the center of the city. So all the other regions of Natal came here, get contaminated as well, but the poor people is the informal workers who are suffering more. So just to enliven this, Alecrim is the name of the neighborhood who has the free markets. Alecrim before the pandemic. This is Alecrim. It's a cool place. You have fruits, you have free market, you have vegetables, all with really good price and all really crowded. There's no place to run a car here. In here, this is in Natal, is a popular city. We have the Olympics here, a bunch of things, but this is Alecrim before the pandemic. And here is Alecrim now, as yesterday. Is exactly the same thing, but now everyone is wearing a mask. But we can see that doesn't make any difference this here, because everyone is still crowded. This guy here, they don't know, they just think I have to put a mask. Is another thing that I have to do to go to work, and I have to put this mask, and I have to stay all day with this mask. But another guy here with the mask down is just an unfortunate obligation that they have now. They don't feel the necessity or they don't feel that the mask is going to help them because there's a virus that is going to disseminate if they go to work. They think, oh, there's another thing that I have to do to through my day because I have to work from 6 to 6 and get home and take off this mask. I can't wait to get home to take this mask. This was just the slides that I want to show. I don't have to stop my share screen right now, just to show a little bit the plots that we have. And this is actually, as we speak yesterday, we decided to do more like a conversation than a presentation, but I show a few slides just for to see what is happening in Brazil. We have a major situation happening right now, and as you can see from the plots, the informal workers class is the one that is suffering more, I guess, because as Aléxia well put it in the beginning, the facial masks doesn't have any purpose if you collecting garbage on the floor on your bare foot, and what's the point of wearing a mask? So I would like to open to a discussion right now with you, and I appreciate it.
Leandro, I have a question.
Okay.
You wrote in your abstract, and you also explained that there are privileged and less privileged persons. So what is the death rate between privileged and less privileged persons?
Okay.
There is a difference.
There's a difference, and we can see that difference in the contaminated rate and the death rate. So if I don't have the plots here, but as I said in the beginning, São Paulo was the first state to get infected. And the first person who got infected in São Paulo was a upper class person who came from, I guess, the regions of China and then passed through Italy, something like that. I don't remember. But it was an upper class person who came from traveling, from vacation. And this person came home and test positive. Thank you. Just a second. Bubbling water. And test positive for the COVID-19. This was the first person. The second person to get infected was her housemate, a person who worked in her house. And that second person, that was a housemate, was the first person to die in Brazil. So you can, from that, you can see the starting point. The first person was an upper class, got tested positive, get a treatment in the best hospital in São Paulo. And the second person was contaminated by that one, but she didn't have the health plan, the care, or it was in the beginning. So we didn't have here the frightening of the pandemic that you have to stay home. But we were in the beginning, and there was not a decree, but council saying that if you can stay home, you stay home. But in that case, it was a housemate, and the first person said, I need a housemate. I cannot leave a day without a housemate, so you can't go home, you have to stay here. And that person got infected, and that person dies. So bringing that to now, we have the rate of contaminated people and the rate of deaths. If we look the plots, we're gonna see that the most contaminated regions in São Paulo are placed in the better places, in the upper class places, the most contaminated places. But the places that have the most deaths are in the places that the poor people live. You go to favelas, go to neighborhoods where you don't have healthcare systems or a hospital that works. So we have a problem uh, of asymptomatics and under confirmed people. I don't know if that's the name, but we don't have enough tests to test everyone. And in Brazil, I don't know in the rest of the world, but in Brazil, if you have money, you can buy a test. It costs like $100 bucks, I guess, $100. In Brazil, the dollar is 6 reals, so more like 600 reals. Um, uh, an informal worker earns a minimum wage, or more or less like that. He does not have the money to buy a test to see if he has to stay home. He has to believe that it's just a flu or is allergic or something like that. The poor people just get tested when they are about to die. They go to the hospital, almost dying, get a test, it's positive, and then they die. The upper classes have the privilege or to get tested earlier. I have a cough. I'm gonna get tested because I have a cough. But the poor people don't have that privilege. So yes, we can see the difference in the death rate.
I would like to intervene.
Thank you.
I would like to intervene. And, yeah. Let me first congratulate you for this fascinating presentation, Aléxia and Leandro.
Thank you.
Alarming are the data coming from these
Yes.
charts. I can only feel very, very sad and worried about the developments in the coming weeks in Brazil. I want to push you in some direction because of the word privilege. In these times, there are lots of paradoxes. And in the COVID world...
Sorry, there are a lot of what?
Paradoxes. The paradox,
okay.
The paradox of higher rates of infection in urban areas, in areas with higher development, human development. I would rather use the word vulnerabilities because of informal workers have no choice, cannot afford to stay isolated at home. They are exposed, are more likely to expose in the front line of the struggle against the virus. And they have unequal access to services, to healthcare services. I see in the title of your presentation the word surviving, and I would like to ask you about surviving strategies by the informal workers. Who is supporting these people? Family, community? If they don't go to work, who is going to, feed them? The state through some aid, payments, allowances, or philanthropy, benevolent funds, family, community. Another thing that I remember, I've seen that in India with these workers working in open air markets. When India imposed restrictions and closed down these open air markets, all these workers lost their jobs, were pushed out of the urban areas, and because they were from another state, they commuted by train, by foot, walking for days to return to their home state. Many of them never reached their destination because they died of exhaustion. Is something like that some development happened in Brazil? These informal workers, for instance, were they pushed out of the urban areas to return to their own home? Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. That was you had two questions. They both are really important, I guess. And the first question, I'm gonna answer the second one just because it's fresh in my mind, and I answer the first one. You're saying about the thrive for survivance of the informal workers who have to leave the actual places to go to another place, or to get a job, or to stay safe, right? Uh, Here in Brazil is a bit different because, as you know, we have a president who win the majority of the votes, and in Brazil has a conservative mind, conservative in the meaning of religion, and more leaning to the right mind. So when the president and the government speak about the coronavirus and the pandemic and say you have to continue to work because the economy depends on that, most people sadly agree with that. So we don't have we have a bunch of people dying and get infected, but we have the same amount of people think that is just a phase, is going to pass, and I'm not going to change anything about my day to get safety because it's just a hoax. Uh, there's not such thing as coronavirus. I never met anyone who died from coronavirus. You met? They don't believe in that. So in the most crowded zones, if you stop and lost a minute to talk with some of those people, they are all in denial. They are the most affected people, but they all are in denial. The people that are, I would say again, privileged or not vulnerable, they stay at home because they can stay at home. They can afford the time to think about the pandemic, to do a little bit of research to see what that media or that media is saying, to see what is the truth. But the guy who works selling shoes in the center of the supermarket, he doesn't have the time, and he is a bit conservative, and he is in denial. But he wears a mask because the state says so. Because without a mask, he's gonna get a fee, and he can't allow to have taxes to pay because he don't wear a mask. So I don't know if to answer your second question, but Brazil is a bit different in this way. The yes, uh, for the first question is what we can do. What is anyone doing something about these people because they need help? Here in Brazil and United States and Italy and France and other countries, we have the emergence. I don't know the name in English, but it's the emergent auxílio,
Fund?
emergency. Yeah, fund. Yes, the emergency fund, and it's billions of dollars in dollars, but it's billions of reals because, as I said in the beginning, in the worldwide we have up to 2 billion people in informal work, informal worker situation. In Brazil, we have close to 14 million people in informal work situation. The from these 14 million people, not all can get this emergency fund, but all is going to try to get. You have to don't have to have a formal job in the system. You have to get a child, I guess, or depending of how many people are in your family, you will receive amount of money differently. That goes from 600 reais to 1,200 reais. But that was the speculation at the beginning, and now we stick with 600 reais. That is $100. So no one can live with $100. An informal worker earns more than that, but he works a lot all day and earns more a lot, like 3 times more than that. But the government is trying to say, if you have informal work, you have to stay home. and we are going to give you this money to stay at home. But this money is not enough for you to stay at home because you have debts, you have a bunch of other things that you have to pay, and you have family, and 600 reals, $100 is not going to cut. For the formal worker class that has a contract with a company, what the government did was we pay half of the salary of this employee. So a company like a supermarket has an employee who earns one minimum wage. The company pays half, and the government pays the other half. So that way you don't get the company in trouble, and you help the employee. In this way, it works because the company obligates the employee to stay at home. It works. But in the other way, that is an informal worker, they get the money and they go to work in a way. So it's not effective because you're not having people to stay home. You're giving them money. It's a good thing. You're giving money, but you don't have other tools to guarantee that they're gonna stay at home because $100 is nothing for this type of person.
They enjoy a lower level of social protection. That was clear, and I'm afraid that this is not only seen in Brazil but elsewhere. I keep an eye on the time, and
Oh
I
yes.
would suggest to move to the next presentation if it is okay with you, and if it is okay with those attending us online, to keep their questions for later. And once again, thank you, Aléxia and Leandro. Fascinating to listen to you. I have the pleasure to introduce now Nadia Dario from the Italian Ministry of Education and Research, MIUR, Italy. Nadia has a PhD in philosophy and educational science from the University of Ca' Foscari in Venice, Italy. She works as a teacher in primary and secondary schools and is a freelance researcher and associate at various academics groups. Just to name a few: IBEF, Center of Excellence, IBEF Ideas for the Basic Education of the Future, and GRIS, Gruppo di Ricerca sulle Interazioni Sociali, University of Salerno. In the past, her areas of interest included general pedagogy and psychology, curriculum and teachers' education. Now, her focus is on pedagogy and educational and cultural psychology, and her practice pays special attention to generating processes for praxis and research in education, in addition to mind wandering and imagination. Beyond academics, Nadia got involved in several international social projects. She worked on mapping the migratory phenomenon and on the inclusion of foreign minors, the relationships between migrant families and institutions in school and municipalities of Treviso, amongst others. The title of Nadia's presentation is Teaching During the COVID-19 Pandemic. Nadia, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Christopher, for your presentation. Are you hearing me? Yeah, okay, thank you. So first of all, I would like to thank the organization for the opportunity it's given me. In this presentation, we'll deal with a critical analysis of the situation of school and teaching in Italy, and to then proceed to a description of an empirical study that mapped the teacher experience during the COVID-19. But we want to finish with a reflection on the new perspective of schools and teachers. So, sorry, wait, please, on the other side. Okay, so allow me to consider a few points through the lens of critical pedagogy. The crisis situation in which the Italian school system finds itself is simply amplified by the COVID-19 crisis. And I would like to illustrate a bit the history of the public school system since the 1950s. Obviously, it's only an overview, and we make this introduction to show that, unfortunately, pedagogy is always one step behind the social and the political changes. We have to keep in mind that, and in this sense, yes, we have to keep in mind that you need the empirical aspect and also the critical analysis is quite difficult. It's quite a difficult task that we hope to be able to accomplish. So we in Italy, we have a first phase that goes from the end of the Second War to the middle of 50s. And we could call this phase the frozen period because it kept the totalitarian ideology intact. And school and teaching are useful tool for maintenance of social stratification, and they are a form of socialization of masses. There are only two possible avenues: the liceo, to train the future ruling class, and the professional school, to prepare the working class without the possibility of aspiring to change your lot. These ideas are derived from Gramsci ideas. So we can read the passive revolution and the contradictory reforms. The period of the that I call the contradictory reform goes from the middle of the 50s to the end of the 1990s. And we defined it in this manner because we have a single radical reform of the school system, the unified middle school, which made attendance until the age of 14 mandatory. After that, there was a succession of minor and contradictory reforms. For example, teachers are allowed to take 150 hours off for refresher courses. We have the inclusion and disabled students. And the aim of these reforms was to give the impression to change without really changing much. And then we have the last period. And from the 19th, anticipated by previous changes in the school programs and curriculum, we have the neoliberal drift. It corresponds exactly to globalized capitalization and an ideology which, with a defined structure, all social bodies acquire a business structure. The social context consists of enterprises. The metaphors of this period are acquire a business structure and are instead of Italy, the country, is Italy the business enterprise. And the main institutions become businesses. So we no longer talk about the health system, but the health business. And school perceived as business, as a business. You can hear sentences like Giannini, that at the time is the former education minister, has converted the university. Giannini has converted the university into a business. So on the individual level, we have the categorical imperative. Everyone is in a business to himself. And so competition is, in this period, the mechanism that guarantees social relationship. And we can say that, in fact, a second principle of neoliberalism, neoliberal thesis is that all kinds of social organization have to follow a competitive logic. So the human capital is stressed. That is a mix of knowledge and competencies useful to develop a technological advanced productive process. And so competencies are important, but not all of them, only those that facilitate the productive process. Thus, the school must be a competitive gene, where students are trained for an early age, and schools, teachers, and pupils must compete among themselves. School must attract more customers. Students and teachers are forced to compete among themselves through the use of bonuses, and they in turn must force students to compete among themselves. So the entire social system is pervaded by this spirit. The entire system is geared toward the maximum efficiency. So at this point, I want only to show that so we will ask ourselves what this crisis suggests to us. How is school changing in new Cardiff society? The social context modules, the educational offer, and teacher thought on the subject influence the psychological context of teaching. So without falling into the layman pedagogy, we start from teacher experience to express a critical analysis of both schools and teaching. So teacher began this 2019-2020 school years, physically populated classroom where they could interact with students and colleagues with an average of 22 students per class. We went from crowded classes to another period in which to distant learning. That the reasoning behind government measure is to slow down the spread of the infection in order to alleviate the pressure on the national health system. And during the 3-month lockdown, we went from sporadic local lockdown to a total nationwide lockdown, and then to a so-called second phase, a return to a partial freedom, but nothing has changed for schools. And the March 4th ordinance still applies. So all schools activities, including childcare service, are are suppressed except for distant learning. Yeah. So we conducting explorative research with a quality methodology, but in my opinion, is useful to understand the emergence of new topics for understanding which is the path that the school wants to start at the moment. And so we do this explorative research, collecting 20 teachers, interview and diary, without forgetting the systemic approach. But our study is based on a semi-structured interview divided into two parts: a personal experience of teacher as person involved in this event, and as teachers before and after. And then we created a blog, and we collected teacher diary. We collected thoughts, opinion, emotions of teacher during the 3 months. Now we're still collecting them, so this research is not finished, and we only want to stress some elements that emerge from it. So so we are still collecting them because the school is not over yet, and we are noticing that the metamorphosis in the human condition has repercussions on schooling. And certainly COVID-19 has represented a situation of trauma and stress that has marked life system, development plans, and of course also the school. The first phase of the emergency was characterized by an explosion of strong sensation, feelings, emotion, fear or terror, horror, helplessness, and lack of assistance. But that is not the end of it. This experience also leads to disorientation in space and time, alteration of space and time, dilatation and contraction. One of the interviews says, "My dining room is becoming my classroom." So we have a sense of the realization with the consequences the subject doesn't not recognize the external world. So the person has the sensation of thrown. That is the idea of Heidegger. And so the emergencies give the feeling of being thrown. And the person has the perception of risk, but also the perception of the possibility of a transformation. And this is what happens also in teacher. They say that transformation aspect is of interest, and it is connected with teacher needs to reinvent themselves and to develop beta and third learning level. But we are uncertain between. We have a sense of destabilization that creates this possibility of transformation, certainly. The macro tendencies, there is another aspect that means that this COVID-19 amplified what happens in the knowledge society. Because the macro tendencies of knowledge society are amplified, as also expressed in another probably presentation. We have a qualitative and quantitative transformation of teacher label. We have the smart work linked to market instability. In this situation, teachers perceive as difficult any hypothesis of pianification of their life. And in the same time, a contradictory sensation of the necessity to reinvent themselves. But all these aspects are clear in teacher words, as it is evident that the metamorphosis of human condition puts care at the center of education. But there is an educational meaning of this, because according to the pedagogical point of view, we go from the epistemology of cure as taking charge of an illness even, to the idea of a shared, responsible, ethically oriented action and the interpretation of person experience as a whole. So this is very important because it's also linked to the problem of distance learning and equity. And so the technical tools are not available to everyone, but teachers stress the impossibility of creating connection because there is a disparity of means among students. So return and emerge a main idea of capabilities to develop functioning in people, and as a systematic approach toward institution comes to the fore again. So we have the idea of Martin Nussbaum. And so technology is nothing, is something instrumental but at the service of purpose. And so they, as teacher, reproduce previous experience with online teaching, but yet there is a dominant, unfortunately, a dominant approach with this teaching is teacher question, students response, and teacher comments evaluation. And this is because technology follow a linear logic. But teachers know that the sense of education is produced by every man, starting from his own context. So teachers try to pay attention on action, but in this time where there is the distant learning, it's difficult to do that because everything is linked to, they have to pay more attention to subject matter rather than methodology knowledge. And so we can treat also another aspect, that is the evaluation. I want only to give you the idea of the emergencies. So students learn in an informal context where the families is present and teachers do not believe in the validity of evaluation. And so in teachers' opinion, the dominant equation is observable, miserable. So you can see that one of the expression was that you can see that she is looking toward a mother for approval. And if teacher can see students' hands and feet, do they assume that they are not learning? But if they have parents nearby, do they learn? Instead, should we ask ourselves how to cooperate, create community with families, how to create alliance, in particular with the parents, plays the role of both teacher and pupils. And there was also one question about the future of the school. Teachers imagine that they can go back to school. and they knew with the additional technological knowledge that they have acquired in the meantime. Now teachers know that in the future, school and work cannot be thought of only in the present tense. However, doesn't this also apply to the micro future, oriented towards the individual benefit of predicting future development? While it is much more useful to understand what happened in the micro future, assuming an ethical nature of training choice. So what we want to do and to open the debate, because COVID has stopped classroom activities, but not the positive side. It has given teachers the possibility to reflect on their action. They are reconsidering the concept of care of others, and citizenship. Unfortunately, the government intends to maintain the status quo and to keep on relying on a competitive system. The issued decree instructing teachers to make up for lost competencies does re-establish competition among students. At that stage, we have to determine whether the purpose of school is to form new producers, to be an instrument of capitalism, where teachers are members of an enterprise, or whether we intend to value teacher experience, like in this case, they express a new way, experience, know-how, and habits acquired through years of teaching. In fact, this experience has shed light on the fragility of these neoliberal ideas, and has stressed the importance of cooperation and set the foundation for rethinking the new alliance. This means that not to lose sight to the purpose of school, the first principle of pedagogy. The man is an end, not a means. The growth of human being is the purpose of education. A wrong question would be, what is the purpose of human growth? Because human growth doesn't have a purpose, but it is itself the purpose of education. So we have also a number of new empirical questions. For example, how to reconsider the education alliance, which competences are required, which kind of expert teaching model we want to develop, and which also professional training for teacher. So this is also the beginning of our debate, and my presentation is finished. Sorry because I read, but as you know, I'm the daughter of a French woman, and so my English is not always perfect. I prefer to write.
Thank you, Nadia.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I noted down a lot of interesting thoughts that can relate to the Greek context. I noticed the reform fatigue, successive reforms that are sending confusing messages over the purpose of them, that are caught in partisan politics. And then they are framed within the neoliberal ideology of education equals commodity and learner equals consumer. I would like to challenge you. Unfortunately, we don't have much time, a little more than 15 minutes.
Okay.
I would like to challenge you because I think this is a question we're gonna face as societies in post-COVID. What kind of reform is necessary for education institutions in the post-COVID era?
Okay, it's not
to
so
address these challenges?
Yes, it's not so difficult to answer to this question because we have in front of a man that is diminished because he's considered a producer. But I don't want to say that to respect some competencies that follow the idea of entrepreneurship are wrong. This is not the question. The question. The problem is that we have to respect our constitution in its foundation. And the Italian constitution talks about the democracy. And we forget always these aspects when we treat about schools. So on one side, we have the idea of production of men and production. On the other side, we have to remind that there is also the growth of human, the purpose is human growth, as I said before. Yeah. So, and this is explained perfectly in our constitution. And the reform didn't consider this aspect in the past.
All right, thank you.
They always are they fit with the market.
Nadia, thank you. I know we have little time, and we asked Carolee if we can pass just a little bit. I have just a short question, and then we pass to Christopher.
Yes,
Just a short question at the middle of the presentation. I think it was interesting when you say that our business follow the competitive rules, and here university, private and public, also follow the same rules. So we have competitivity, the competitivity spirit within the classes. But that's not the question. This question is some parents advocate for homeschooling since always. And now we are living in a homeschooling scenario, but children are still being taught by professors via video conference, lectures, YouTube videos, and so on. Do you think that could be a middle place or a cooperation between homeschooling and distance education?
Yes, of course. We have to reconsider. I say that we have to reconsider the model of teaching, of expert teaching. And this is very important because the model, the Schulman models, the German model, the Anglo-Saxon models, doesn't consider in all aspects the importance of action and the importance of cooperation. And so it's important really to reinvent a new way of describing the situation, but also imagine a new alliance between a new community. In this month, I did a research where I tried to create the community between teacher, students, and parents. So I think that it's possible to generate this alliance, a new alliance between these different parts.
Thank you, Nadia. I would just ask you to stop the sharing of your screen.
Yeah, sorry.
Now you have Christoforos. Christopher in English, Christopher. That is Christoforos Pavlakis. I guess I say right. Has been trained as a psychologist at the University of Athens, Greece. He pursued a master's degree in arts and new media at the Free University of Berlin, Germany. He makes community theater with age-diverse and mixed ability groups in Greece, and he tries, through his practice, to explore the nexus arts and well-being in order to conceptualize the term of a caring artist. So, Christopher, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Leandro, for the kind introduction. My profound thanks go to the PGC 2020 for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be amongst this lineup of speakers, and I enjoyed very much. We have 12 minutes, so I will try to capture the essence of behind the abstract social justice in times of social distancing. I'm delivering this presentation from the bedroom of my apartment in southern Athens, Greece, who, as a country, never experienced pressure on the healthcare system. Uh, Restrictions on movements were imposed quite early March, and the toll in the number of infectionated or diseased fellows were kept lower comparatively to neighbors by the same population. I can only deplore, as a general comment, and sticking to the news and to the debate that opened on the day after the COVID-19 and the disruptions that were introduced in our lives, at the poor level of the debate in terms of fresh thinking. And I can add as a comment that a provocative comment that either COVID is not as historic as we think it is, and this will not have such profound implications in the way we live, we work, we teach, and we learn, or we are intellectually lazy and we don't engage critically to see what will happen once we exit this phase of lockdown as globally. Please feel free to poke me and to challenge me in the chat room. As a theatre maker, I intended to read out a futuristic scenarios capturing my reflections on how different fractions will try to respond to the challenges, either with the intention to preserve the status quo in education, in economy, or challenging it, rebel against it based on ideology or interest groups. So, social justice in times of social distancing, June 2020, the curve is flattening somewhere, at least somehow, but then it bends and rises again, irregular and hardly traceable. At the beginning, governments were successful at imposing strict quarantine rules over the whole population. They solved little, but at least they indeed allowed them to buy time. By now, national governments get quickly caught into a new pinch between, on the one side, the need of transnational agreements over sanitary protocols and financial support of stalled regions, and on the other side, the assessment of very specific situations with tailor-made measures reclaimed by self-organized communities. Situation rooms. There are no rooms anymore. They are diagrams, data sets, social and bodily sensors, aggregated into models and patterns that are used to draw simulations to assess the value of what some economists would call the statistical life, the price the administrations are ready to pay to avoid a certain number of deaths. R, V, Z, or whatever indexes draw curves that are setting the conditions for a radical redefinition of economic policies. As a prominent politician recently said, while desperately trying to grasp at this new invisible enemy, the cure shouldn't be worse than the disease. That made those in denial the flat earthers. The earth is flat, very happy. Propaganda and counter-information. If you think about it, governing by simulations can be a hell of a head-spinning challenge. technocrats in the shadow of highly respected scientists and financial fixers, professional politicians asking their experts to cook the books so they can pretend they are still making decisions, while techno-libertarians are delighted to invest in futures that are recursively able to change the very present of policies. We are talking about the Screen New Deal, the language as a courtesy of Alphabet Incorporation, life as a courtesy of Amazon, Bezos. Now face the facts. Mess is all around you. The pandemic is not yet over. It won't be for some time. As the saying goes, the old is not dead and the new is not born yet. Likely predictions don't seem to come true, but anticipation is also preparation, visionary imagination, the design of the new societies and coalitions, spontaneity in calculation. Liberals can't stop talking about the new normal. Sociologists may call it the new age of disorder. Between you and me, we all know that 2020 will be remembered as the year of the big hit. Just to recap, after summer, when the first wave of lockdowns was over, all the fascists can be increasingly teaming up with tired working class and YouTube celebrities to reclaim a twisted version of power to the people, power of truth against incompetent and tainted governments and corrupt scientists, an appealing call that attracts media attention and voters alike, as well as radical free market champions. The earth is flat, one group I call the flat earthers. What they don't get is that sophisticated technological systems are here to stay, and the promise of individual improvement through personal means of production is gaining terrain over narratives based on mere frustration and paranoia. Techno-libertarians, another fraction, are giving a strong response to that. Friendly interfaces, big data, algorithmic governance. Give me data and I can give you the right answer even before you ask. And the third fraction I see is the left that embraces technology, and I call them the new accelerationists, leveraging consent among progressive fringes of the educated elites in national governments and transnational organizations, the UN, the European Union. And they promise a simple package, the universal basic resources. Imagine the discussion, the debate about universal basic income. This must go further, universal basic resources. And some left-leaning governments agree to establish coordinated efforts for a transnational artificial intelligence through their newly established ministries of technological transition. Social justice in times of social distances. A whole new world is rising, fractious. You, watching this Zoom call, are you going to be the hero of the undead militias or the seed of a new anthropoforming? To be continued. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Christoforos.
That was
This
a shorter
scenario.
version of what
Yeah. Sorry, what?
That is a shorter version within the time limits.
No, I think you can continue.
No, that's fine.
Let me just continue for you, then that you're gonna answer me. Countries like Italy, Spain, China, France, USA, Brazil take the hit pretty bad and are taking the hit pretty bad as we talk. And for us, for you, for Italy, for this country, I have no doubt that the future is gonna be, we're gonna remember this time right now. As for Brazil, we remember the dictatorship that we lived 30 years ago. So we're gonna remember a lot different from some other countries like Argentina, and maybe Chile or Uruguay, they they didn't take the hit as bad as we did, but have uh, they live in more fear because they close borders, they do a bunch of quarantine. Maybe they do the right thing to do, and thus they didn't have as much contaminated people and deaths. But this scenario we live in right now, next year we're gonna remember in this strange way. But what are your thoughts of these countries that don't take the hit so bad as we take the hit? So countries that a pandemic didn't take so much lives, but the worldwide we are living the pandemic, but some countries are not.
I don't agree necessarily with this remark, and you know what? For two
Mm.
reasons. First, we are all collectively traumatized by the mediated pandemic, the images coming of the epicenters of the pandemic. It was shocking, for instance, to see footage coming out of China in March. It was shocking globally to see the military trucks transporting dead bodies out of Bergamo. This shocked anyone. Either you live in Bergamo, either you live in Athens, either you live in Buenos Aires, I think. And the second thing is the side effect of the pandemic and the lockdown policies. Greece has a low level of infections and death toll, but Greece will, uh, in the forecast, will have the deepest contraction in Europe because of the economic consequences. So the economic hit will follow and will be very severe. Third thing,
Mhm.
I think that we now have a proof that we live in a global village with extreme interdependence. Whatever happens in China affects you in Brazil, affects you in Greece. And what I see is the emergence of solidarity, other kind of movements that are, you know, transnational. And what ties them is this experience, this common experience, this collective experience.
So you answer in a sense to the question that I have. How do you purpose to overcome the fears of others? Because I understand that there is this sensation, this perception in the different population all around the world. So how do you purpose to overcome the fear of others? That is.
The country has been in a mode of crisis since 2010. It has never recovered from the never really recovered from the financial crisis from the bankruptcy that started in 2010. And the country flirted with the exit from the common currency, euro, in 2015. So when this came over, there was a pressure from the opinion, from the people in the opinion polls clearly stated, you know, we were aware of the chronically underfunded healthcare sector, and we took the protective measures on our own. And 70, 80% in the opinion polls highlighted, you know what, the importance of taking measures now. Shut down the schools, shut down the airports, close the borders. The fear, if in terms of psychology terms, fear is a feeling, is an emotion of the past. Is an emotion of the past. And I think that at micro level, as individuals, we have no other way than digest the trauma. to realize, for instance, that humans are not transmitting diseases. Humans are transmitting ideas. When individuals are in a crisis, they retract to themselves. They retract to safe spaces, to the home, for instance. And here comes the house as an infrastructure of care. And we have to tackle this because either you live in Brazil, either you live in Italy, either you live in Greece, we know that we face housing crisis. So I would think tomorrow, I would advocate tomorrow to address the housing crisis, because house is a pivotal infrastructure of care and would solve inequalities. When the individual feels safe again and able to digest this trauma, then we can, reach out to the fellow humans, to the nature, and to reconnect in a more modest way and in a more humble way, more environment-friendly way. I hear those in the eco movement that the pandemic is a dress rehearsal for the climate change crisis that is following. Is it like that? I don't know.
So we have, I guess, two attendees. Is 6 participants, and I guess 2 attendees. Elena Kalaja. I don't know if she is listening to us, if she has any questions, because the Q&A button didn't pop up. So I don't know if anyone has a question.
I think I don't think if you guys have any questions to each other, maybe we can address that now.
I'd like to thank you all for this experience. This is my first time as a Zoom speaker, and I enjoyed very much, particularly with this group of people.
Thank you.
And I want to wish you.
Sorry, Aléxia wants to say something.
Yeah.
Yes, Aléxia. Translate. Thank you, Christoforos, for talk. Nadia, I'm very interested in your research. Can you talk more about your research at another time?
Yes, of course. Also, as I expressed in the presentation, it was difficult to connect the critical pedagogy with the empirical work. And in fact, the work on the empirical research is only a way to create suggestion for the critical analysis. But certainly, I would like to share with you my research, and also if someone else wants to help me, I always need help in this sense, because I think that my life is based on learning, and I want to learn a lot. This is what I want to do in my life, and I think that this one moment in this process, in this path. And so I think that your competence and the competence of all the others in this panel is useful for me, and thank you very much for your help. And your work are really brilliant, so thank you also for this.
Thank you, Nadia.
So I don't think if we have any questions. I think I have a bunch of questions, but we're gonna have another hour to cover that.
We can meet again next week.
Of course.
But yeah.
No, just to think, me and Aléxia were talking that this is in fact an opportunity, as we discussed yesterday with Christoforos, that these congress, this panel, if it was in another scenario, we were not going to be able to meet each other because we have to buy air tickets to attend this kind of congress. And the Zoom and this type of platforms, I don't want to say that is the future because it's happening right now, but I guess when this pandemic goes away, we're gonna be using a lot more these type of platforms to do these meetings. And I guess this is a good way to see this scenario.
Yeah.
I wish we had it organized.
Take a picture. Picture.
Should I just okay. I just I will ask you. I would ask all of you to get a little closer, get a smile, because they're gonna take a picture of the screen. So on three, 1, 2, 3. But the administrator get the because where is that other guy?
What?
You have to.
I thought it was between you guys. I didn't want to like.
I gotta take another picture. 1, 2, 3. There you go.
Very good. Bye. Thank you
so much.
It
was a pleasure to hear all of you guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you
So
so
now
much.
I guess
Take care.
we're going to wait a little bit and watch the other keynote speakers.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's no one more. Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye. Wow.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.